Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. I am your host, Rob, and today's going to be a fun show, one I've been looking forward to doing for a while and been trying to coordinate with one of my guests here, and we finally made it happen. And for the longest time, I thought it was going to be over the phone, but I'm super stoked that we get to do this in person. And first, let me introduce our guest, and I'll tell you what we're doing the show on. Ernie Escondrias is down today. How you doing, Ernie?
I'm doing great. We're going on a turkey trot today.
Okay. Cat's out of the bag. We are doing wild turkey, and Dave Scott is here as well.
Glad to be back. Looking forward.
This is a fun episode for me, Ernie, because when you and I first started talking about bourbon, you were already big into bourbon, and you were huge into wild turkey. And you and I spoke a little bit, and I remember talking to you about that. Yeah, I just haven't made myself buy a wild turkey because I had that perception of the 101.
Yep.
Thinking back to the days in high school and college. We didn't really drink in high school. But, that was the inexpensive bottle that you could get to mix or take shots when you played quarters or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something I thought was a quality bourbon. And it stuck with me, something that you said. You'd mentioned that you're going to find your way to wild turkey, and that will always, something like it's always going to be home that you'll come back to. That's kind of your foundation is wild turkey.
All roads lead back to wild turkey.
Okay.
Yep.
And so expand on that a little bit. What does that mean for you?
Well, for me, with wild turkey, it's the tradition. They keep it extremely simple. And when you look at their variances, there's only two mash bills that they work with. And one is for their bourbon, the other one is for their rye. And what's interesting about it is they have kept such a tight lid on it for many years. People have been trying to guess for years what the mash bills are. And Jimmy is just this, Jimmy Russell, he is a living legend. And we'll hopefully talk a little bit more about him later. But when he talks about his mash bills and you bring it up to him, he just kind of smiles at you. And if you give him some percentages, he'll just say, yeah, that sounds close enough.
Yeah. So do we not know the mash bills, or do we know kind of what they use, but we just don't know what product they're in?
Well, there's been discussion, and it looks like the bourbon mash bill is 75% corn. And what is cool about wild turkey, again, is the tradition. They've been getting their corn from Kentucky, sourced from Kentucky, since the beginning, and they haven't wavered from that. And so there's that consistent, they use a non-GMO Kentucky corn.
Okay.
And with that, they're looking at a mash bill, they guess 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. Now, the rye traditionally only comes from Germany.
Oh, really?
Yep. And the malted barley comes from the Dakotas.
Did you know that, Dave?
Had no idea.
I didn't either. That's why I like doing these two, man. I get to learn so much. And for me, I get to learn now because it's become, like you said, one of my favorite distilleries. I know you
Same.
and I, Dave, have talked about that
Absolutely.
several times.
Because like you said, I always viewed wild turkey as a budget or bottom shelf product.
Right.
And then when I started getting more and more into bourbon and finding Russell's Reserve, and I'm like, hey, that's a wild turkey product. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's been a cool journey getting here.
I didn't think about it until you just said it, though, Ernie. You talked about, one thing you really like about them is their tradition. And I didn't realize till you were just mentioning, there is no kind of, I don't know if I want to call it gimmicky, but there's no toasted barrel. There's no other stuff that they're doing. It's all kind of that straightforward bourbon, just kind of in different ways or different proofs, different processes in the way they're distilling it, but really just
It's bourbon and rye.
Yeah.
Bourbon and rye, the way it should be. And that's where, if you think about it, you think about Turkey 101. Where else can you get a 6 to 8 year bourbon for less than $20?
Yeah.
And
Not only that, it really tastes good.
Right.
yeah, and I love doing flights like this because I always like to start off with the basement budget bourbon
Yeah.
of a line because it just kind of warms up your palate. And so if you notice, though, with the 101, there's striking similarities between this and when you start getting into the Russell's Reserve. The nose isn't the same, but there's a lot of similarities. Obviously, with the 101, It's a little more. There's a little more ethanol to it.
Yeah.
But the richness is still there. And people go crazy for boutique bourbons now. And I'll give you an example. I brought you one today, that private group from Driftless Glen.
Which I'd never even heard of. Still don't have a clue what it is, but I was excited to be able to try something different.
But you bought it for like $60 or something like that. That's a 4-year rye.
Okay.
I can go buy a Turkey 101 rye off the shelf for a liter for right around $27. And if you love old fashions, that's the rye of choice.
Okay.
And if you like it straight, Turkey 101 rye straight is fantastic. I've done blinds with several of the rye products, Cornerstone, Turkey 101, the new barrel strength rare breed.
Yeah.
And the rare breed actually beat them all out.
Not surprised. I mean, it leapfrogged everything I thought I really liked when we did it.
Yep.
We recently did a blind with 4 different ryes, and the rare breed rye was the number one for Rob and I.
And just tasting it, knowing what we were tasting, we kind of thought that was my opinion, tasting it, seeing what I was tasting. But then we did a blind the next week, put it up against Pikeville and some other good ryes, and it's fantastic.
Well, to me, though, when you think about bourbon, rare breed is it for me.
Yeah.
It is a good
It's a
proof.
sweet spot.
Yep.
It's the sweet spot. And the rye, I was so grateful when they came out with the rye, because 101 is good,
Yeah.
but it just didn't have the punch, the proof. And having had it now, I constantly want to have one of those on my shelf.
Now, I've heard people say, I haven't had the 101 rye from Wild Turkey. I've heard a lot of people say it's okay. And I've heard them say that they prefer a different bourbon a different rye for a old-fashioned in that price. But you like it quite a bit.
I do. When you start thinking old fashions, though, it's all about the bitters.
Yeah.
And you can change the flavor of a rye by choosing the wrong bitters.
Yeah.
So, budget-wise, always use a budget rye. I prefer Turkey.
Okay. I got to try it. I just haven't. But 101 is where you got me back into trying it there, you and Wade. Isn't there one step down? This is kind of the entry level, but there's one that's...
I believe they have an 80 proof.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah,
Okay.
and...
Kind of skip that, or is that kind of a mixer? Or is that somebody that's just getting into bourbon? Maybe you start them there?
No.
Okay.
No.
Don't even go there.
Don't even go
Start
there.
with 101.
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
That's kind of where I was. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something.
No, you didn't miss anything.
Why start with an 80 proof bourbon?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm past that already anyway. But this 101 is fantastic. So what's the history a little bit about Wild Turkey? To me, just because I know it for so many years growing up and it's always been around, I think of it as one of the older producers of bourbon or whiskey in the States anyway.
Well, you think that, but it's actually not that old.
Really?
We're looking at 1970, actually, when Turkey became what it is today.
1970?
1970.
Really?
And so in 1971, the first decanter release of all bourbon distilled at Wild Turkey was released. Before that, Wild Turkey was sourced.
From?
Multiple sources, and it's hard to pin it down, but some of it came from Michter's.
Okay.
That was one of the ones that stood out. And before that, I think it was Baltimore Pure Rye was their rye source for a lot of years.
Wow.
And you'd be surprised how much sourced bourbon is out there today. Now, when you think about sourced bourbon out there today, think about MGP. So Baltimore and Michter's were kind of the sourcing agents of that time frame.
Okay. So when I see Austin Nichols on a bottle of Wild Turkey, where does that tie into the brand?
Let's see. I have it in my notes here. So Back in, let's see, I believe it was 1940. The first batch of Wild Turkey is bottled in 1940.
But it's sourced.
But it's sourced. Austin Nichols, president, it's kind of a funny story. He took samples on a turkey hunt, and his fellow hunters liked it and kept asking him for more of that wild turkey stuff.
So that's how they associated when we were on the wild turkey hunt.
And then that's when they started distilling back in 1940.
Okay, so they did actually start distilling their own in 1940?
No, but as far as
Bottling
it.
And then calling it wild turkey, where that name was first introduced.
Correct.
Okay, so it's been around 80 years.
Yeah, it goes back even further than that. The history goes back to the Rippey family in 1830.
You say Rippey, and initially, Dave, I think about...
Rip Van Winkle.
Well, no, I was going to say... So I know it's not associated with that, I don't think, is it?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
I think about the little bottle I see in the liquor stores a lot of times.
Yep.
It says Old Rippey.
Yeah.
And that's a 375 milliliter.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
Which is a nod from the Campari company to the history of wild turkey.
Oh, okay, so it's just a little acknowledgement.
Yep.
Okay.
But until today, I always just thought that somebody was taking a swipe at
Oh, did you really?
Old Rip Van Winkle, just
see, I
saying that
never-
it was Old Rippey.
That makes sense.
So-
I never put that together. And I figured, I've never had it, but I figured it had to be somewhat decent because at a 375, Ernie, I think it's like $48 or whatever it is.
It's well overpriced for
Yeah, okay.
for what it is.
So this goes all the way back to the early 1800s then.
Yeah, but Austin Nichols started in 1934. They began importing wine and liquor and sourcing American whiskeys.
And he comes from a grocery store line?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Once Old Hickory Springs, actually, distillery, was one of their sources for quite some time. And so it's been in the Rippey family, for quite some time. Fitz, Martin, and Clough, who were part of the original three, changed the name to Austin Nichols. And the owners were Robert Austin and James E. Nichols.
So Austin Nichols was on the label from when to when?
Starting, I believe, in 1940.
Until like the 70s, something like that?
Yep. No, Austin Nichols has been on the label for up until, I believe, 2014.
Oh, okay, so recently.
Yep.
Okay,
Maybe
'cause
2013.
You brought me this bottle, and I've seen it, but I've never had a bottle. I don't see it anymore with Austin Nichols on there. So every time I see a bottle, I'm wondering how old is that? Yeah.
Might not be very old.
Okay.
But it's one of those where if you see it, grab it.
Cool thing to have.
It's a cool thing to have.
And it's still good juice in the bottle.
It's still good juice in the bottle.
Yeah.
But beware, because if you find some Austin Nichols on the shelves in some of these little mom and pop stores,
Yeah.
it's usually the lowest proof stuff you can find.
Okay. So
Because it's just sat there as a shelf.
when you say
Decoration.
lowest proof, what do you?
It was 86 proof
Okay, 86. So you would say you want to be around 101 and above.
and above.
Okay. So Wild Turkey obviously has just a iconic history. I mean, they're just very well known in the bourbon world, whiskey world for that matter. I would say globally, would that be fair to say?
Oh, yes.
I mean, when you start talking about, scotches that are from that part of the world that are very popular and famous over here, does it go,
The other way.
Yeah. Say it again?
The other way.
It goes the other way. Okay.
Right.
Well, two companies were extremely smart, and they capitalized on a very thirsty market, the Japanese market.
Okay.
Four Roses and Wild Turkey.
Okay.
Some iconic booze has gone to Japan. And, for example, that one that you have in front of you, the 1855 Reserve. You had that. It's a 1992. It's fantastic. It's probably in my top 5 bourbons that I've had.
Of all time.
Of all time.
Okay.
And it's the 1992. All that is Japanese rare breed.
So it's rare breed that was just made to be released over there only. Couldn't
Right.
get it over here in the States.
Right. And the 1855...
Sounds so good, I think I'll pour some.
Yep. And the 1855 is a nod to when the company was formed in New York City.
Oh, really?
Yep. And so that's where the 1855 came from.
They don't use that anymore, do they?
No, it's a deadline now.
Do you want some of this?
No, I'm good.
You sure?
I'm positive. Y'all enjoy it. What do you think of the nose there?
It's fantastic.
It's one of my favorites. I mean, Ernie was nice enough to bring this down last time he came, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, and like you said, the 101 is a starting point. There are similarities, but
It's deeper. It's richer. You're getting more of the.
it's a little more perfumey than the 101. But yes, they're deeper caramel.
One thing that always, now that I've gotten into turkey, that you have shown me the way, and other people as well, I've figured out that when you talk about quality products, and you talk about a good cost, a good value, and it's always available. I mean, to me, it's one of my top 3 distilleries, and for me, it's probably number 1 as my favorite. Heaven Hill probably just behind it.
Yeah, I would agree. And when I started getting into bourbon a couple years ago and just happened to stumble upon a rare breed, I bought a Russell's Reserve and a rare breed.
Yeah.
And I can remember the first time I tasted rare breed, it's like, okay, I have found where it's at.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and when you're thinking of rare breed, though, it is very traditional because it's non-chill filtered. And so you get more of the oils that you traditionally don't get from, like, let's say a 101.
Okay.
So with chill filtering, it filters out the fatty acids.
Okay.
Well, those fatty acids can really help transport the palate. And
That makes sense.
the mouthfeel is different with something that's non-chill filtered, for example. And so with rare breed, it's non-chill filtered. It's not non-chill filtered, I'm sorry. And same thing with Russell's Reserve. The red labels. And those are extremely underrated. You will see a Russell's Reserve red label on virtually every shelf of every liquor store you walk into, and they just sit there. But if you think about it, you're getting something that's non-chill filtered. You're getting something with a good proof to it. You're getting a single barrel for right around a $50 price point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always thrilled that they're there if I want to go buy one.
exactly.
And the other thing I'm seeing with these is, like a lot of other things, there's a lot of good picks that come in this line.
Yes, and that's something that we can talk about because every rick house has a different flavor profile to it. And so club picks, store selections, if you will, Wild Turkey does some of the best out there.
But here's the thing. Answer this question, because I don't know that I've ever seen this, and maybe I'm just never seen it. I see all kinds of store picks, group picks, whatever you want to call them, from Russell's.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I've ever seen a rare breed or a Wild Turkey 101 pick. Do they do those, or is
They
it
don't do
just
those.
Russell's line?
It's just the Russell's line.
So we probably need to, a lot of people who are into bourbon know the Russell's line. They kind of know that lineage, that history of that family. But we probably ought to expand on that and just kind of, if we're mentioning Russell's as part of Wild Turkey, we need to say who these guys are.
That's a fantastic idea. So when you think about bourbon and a living legend, you think Jimmy Russell.
How old is he now?
I do not know, but
I mean, he's up there.
he is up there, but he is working every day. When you walk in there, he became a master distiller in 1954.
So in 1954, if you
That's-
just guess he's 25,
That's
so-
66 years ago.
yeah.
Yep.
So if you figure he's 25 then, I mean, he's in his 90s or close to 90.
And he just loves what he does.
And he's still doing it.
And he's still doing it. But what...
And you can make him mad when you...
Oh,
go
yes.
pick-
Yeah. He's...
I've heard stories. I've never been around him, but I've heard some funny stories on picks that people have done with him.
Yep.
And, I mean, you're kind of on edge.
You are on edge, but he's also... He will talk to you all day long about bourbon. as long as you're not questioning him, as long as you're not arrogant. I mean, I saw somebody shut down so quickly that they were actually removed from the pick just because of their attitude.
Really?
Yeah, but if you think about it, why would you question a legend?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been doing this, and what I love about Wild Turkey is how they keep it in the family. So you've got Eddie Russell, who is Jimmy's son,
Yep.
who is now a master distiller. And then you've got Bruce, the grandson, who is the brand ambassador.
Now, is that Eddie's son?
That is Eddie's son.
Okay. Didn't know if it was from a daughter and just kind of
Yep.
got into it too. I didn't know that,
And so
that line.
it's a beautiful family tradition.
Yeah.
And so they keep things simple.
So when did Jimmy Russell get to Wild Turkey? You know that answer?
I do. It's in my notes, but I can't seem to find it right now. I believe he started working at the distillery 54.
Well, he started working at JTS Brown,
Yep.
and then became a master distiller in '67. Looking at your note.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So I mean, if he started in '54, you still have to guess he's 25 years old.
Oh.
28 years old,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Why
he's in his
anybody would
90s.
want to argue with him about bourbon when he's been doing it for well over 70 years?
Yep. And what's interesting about, if you look at the lineage of Wild Turkey, there's only been 5 master distillers in the history dating all the way back. And Jimmy and Eddie are 2 of them
in that family.
in that family. And so,
I'm sure Bruce is on his way.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that, but he is a genuinely humble man as well. He's a fun guy to sit down and have a drink with.
So, I mean, I always think about the Russell's line that they have, but Jimmy and Eddie, they pick everything, all the Wild Turkey. They cover the whole product line that's
They
put
cover
out.
it. They are their quality control.
Okay, I didn't know that. Did you?
Had no idea.
I kind of thought they were over the Russell side. I didn't know how much they still had to do with the Wild Turkey side. If there was somebody else that was a player there,
Yep.
but they're not.
And I don't know how true it is, but apparently Jimmy Russell is not a huge fan of rye.
Oh, really?
Yep, he always thought it was a fad, according to the story that I heard.
Well, you don't see a lot of rye product from them. What do they have? They have the Cornerstone. They have the Rare Breed. They have the 101. Is there anything else?
They have a lower proof rye as
They
well.
do have a lower proof, so not a ton.
Not a ton.
Okay. Okay, so here's a question I have for you, and you can, I'm still trying to make my way through and understand and find my little price points of where I want to spend my money when it comes to Wild Turkey. And you said earlier, Ernie, and I agree with you. Rare Breed is kind of my go-to. I mean, that's kind of my standard right there.
Right.
And I see a lot on the shelf next to it all the time. You know which one I'm talking about? The
Kentucky Spirit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's usually like $10 more and a lower proof.
And they do picks with Kentucky Spirit as well.
I
They do.
have seen the picks with Kentucky Spirit.
And they sit on the shelf.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
So-
is amazing how they just sit on the shelf.
Is that bourbon worth the extra $10? Because it's proofed at 101, isn't it?
It
Yes.
is.
So I can get 116.8 with Rare Breed for $10-12 less. I've seen it there. I've never pulled the trigger to buy one, and I'm trying to figure out, is it worth buying one? Or am I just like, nope.
I bought
Does it have a
one.
different profile? Does
I
it
bought
have
one
something that's
fairly recently, but
Okay.
only because it was in the old classic Fantail
Fantail
Okay.
bottle.
bottles.
That's the only
Was it
reason.
a pick?
It was a pick. Houston Bourbon Hounds.
Okay.
But same as you, if I'm going in for a Wild Turkey product, I always look at that Kentucky Spirit, and it's priced $10 higher than the Russells.
Yeah.
And it's lower proof point, and I always end up grabbing the Russells or the Rare Breed.
So am I missing out? And is there something we're missing here, Ernie?
Well, it was released in 1994.
Okay.
And you're missing out on the older stuff. The newer stuff, not so much.
Okay. So if you find an older bottle,
Well, there's an iconic bottle out there that turkey hunters go crazy for, and it's called a pewter top.
A pewter top, okay.
And it's a Kentucky Spirit with this large pewter top that always breaks off.
Oh, really?
Every time I've opened one, it breaks off.
So last year that was made?
The pewter tops were 94, 95, and I believe
So
96.
Just a couple of years.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And
Never heard of
those
them.
are delicious.
Okay.
Next trip down, I'll bring you a pewter top to try because it's fantastic. It's just different. It's a lot more.
Is the proof different? Or is it still
Nope,
101?
It's still 101.
Okay.
And is the pewter top in the fantail bottle?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful bottle. I mean, to have it on the shelf, it's absolutely beautiful.
Is it hard to find? I'm assuming it is at this point in time, being so many years ago, but we all know about that world that bourbon has called secondary.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about them because
But can you find it, or is it out there, or no?
you can, but you're going to pay
Way too much.
Yep, you're going to pay a lot for it,
Okay.
and you're looking at on a secondary $500.
Okay.
But some of the iconic releases came from the 90s,
Okay.
and
Across the line.
across the whole line, the one that everybody loves. I mean, if you drink bourbon and if you've never had it, you're missing out, and that is a cheesy gold foil. It is a 12-year.
Me and Dave are going, what? We're obviously missing out, Dave.
Yeah. Not
Yep.
sure what a cheesy gold foil is.
Well, and I'll tell you why they call it that. So it was released in 1985, and I'm not sure when the line ended, but all it is a 12-year Wild Turkey 101. And it came in this god-awful presentation tube that was gold foil. And so they call it a cheesy gold foil. It has the most unique turkey profile I've ever had.
Really?
And when you think about Wild Turkey, you always, especially the guys that have been drinking it for a while, you'll hear the phrase, the turkey funk.
Okay, I have heard that.
It's musty oak.
Okay.
And so when you're looking at when they changed, you can still get that turkey funk on some of the newer releases of Russell's, but they're few and far between. When they changed from the cypress stills
Okay.
to the stainless steels, that's when that funk changed.
Okay.
And so turkey hunters, that happened right around the mid 90s. And so when you're looking at turkey, the turkey hunters usually go from 96 and below. But when you circle back to cheesy gold foil, those are easily, you can't touch one now for less than $900. And this was a turkey 101 that was sitting in gas stations probably. And
People just didn't know how good it was.
they didn't know how good it was. And it has the most unique
I was
flavor.
born to this hobby way too late.
Yeah, me too.
And another iconic bottle is the Cuvée Lafayette. It is also a 12-year, and I believe it only was out in the 1990-91 range.
So they do that a lot? Do they produce something for a year or two and then say, hey, even though we know it was good, we're just not going to produce anymore?
Not
Is it-
now, because now they've pared it down to what the line is today.
Oh, okay. A little more business efficient.
The more business efficient.
Okay,
And so they've started concentrating more on club picks and store picks for the
Just kind
Russell's.
of where bourbon has went.
Yep. And with Russell's Reserve, that is their upper echelon type of stuff. But even that's what I love about Wild Turkey product. Their price points, I mean, you look at Michter's, you look at other retail over $100
Sure.
for stuff. With Wild Turkey, they may put out a special release like a Master's Keep,
Right.
which you were lucky enough to pick up.
Yeah.
They put one of those out every year, and they've put out a rye.
Now, they've only been doing that for how many years, the Master's Keep?
Well, the Master's Keep, you have the
It's only been a handful of years? Or am I
Handful of
wrong on
years.
that? That's what I thought, about 4 or 5 years?
4 or 5 years.
You've got the diamond,
The decades?
the decades.
Yeah, Diamond.
Cornerstone.
This year's Bottled in Bond. Are we missing
Oh,
one?
and Revival.
And Revival. That's the fifth one. So,
And the Oloroso. Was that Revival?
That was Revival, correct.
so 5 so far.
5 so far, unless you count the iconic one that went to Australia only.
Oh, I remember hearing something about
Yes.
that. Somebody said that that's the only one they're missing in their collection. He goes, but I'll never get it.
Yeah.
If he came to my house, he could have.
You
some.
have it, really?
I do.
Road trip next week, Dave.
Sounds
And
good.
It's an interesting one. It doesn't get to the U.S. market very often because Australia has such strict guidelines for shipping anything in and out of the island.
Do they really? So I
Very
know Christopher O'Mara, he's a friend of ours here that's from Australia, and he's able to bring some, like the green bottles of Bland's or whatever it is, he can bring it back. But I'm wondering how, even in that market over there, how accessible this particular one is. How old is it?
It came out when
5 years?
Decades came out.
Okay, when Decades came out.
Now, what's
So I'm sure it's still around. A few
Oh,
places.
it is.
And what is it called?
I believe it is 1854. I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I'll look when I get home.
And is it in that same Master's Keep style bottle?
It is. It's exactly the same, and you would actually confuse it for a Decades because the color of the box and everything is the same. But it was interesting, and yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, I have it in my notes. 1894 for Australia, and that came out in 2017. That's when the Masters Keep started. But what was interesting is one of the best releases was the Russell's Reserve 1998. You asked about upper echelon bottles.
Yeah.
They've released 2
Okay.
iconic ones as of late. And that was the Russell's Reserve 1998, which...
Is that the year it was released, 1998?
Yes. No, that's when it was...
That's what it's called.
Yep.
Okay.
That's when it was distilled.
Oh, distilled. Okay.
Yep. And that came out in 2015.
Okay.
So
So it's a 17-year-old.
by far, it's in my top 5.
Really?
It is a beautiful bourbon that is, it just has no rival, really. It is fantastic and extremely hard to come by. And if you're lucky enough to find one, you're not going to touch it for less than $1,000.
That's going to be secondary.
Yep.
To find it. What was the retail on it when it was released?
Probably $199.
Okay, right up there with the other Master Keep bottles.
Right. And then in 2018, they released Russell's Reserve 2002. And that was also a very, very solid bourbon, but it wasn't the 1998.
Okay.
And it comes in a beautiful presentation box. It's a wood presentation box. It's a beautiful thing to have on your shelf, but to drink it,
Doesn't compare to the other one.
it makes you sad when it's gone.
Oh, wow.
It's just one of those things where you have it. And
These are ones I've never heard of. You?
No.
And
That's out of my league. I'm
Yeah.
playing T-ball.
I mean, I'm looking at a few of these going, this is what turkey's all about. But,
Yeah.
man, they've done some really cool stuff that a lot of people who think they're into turkey and maybe know a little bit about turkey probably are missing a lot of stuff.
No.
Well-
and when you called me earlier today to see if I had anything interesting to offer to the lineup, it made me take inventory of what I have
Yeah.
and realize that every wild turkey product that I acquire, I drink through it
Pretty quick.
because they're so fantastic. And
They're-
and I look on my shelf and it's like, I don't have any. They're all gone. So
well, in the Russell's Reserve line, that's Jimmy's. I mean, that is his line. And
They do a rye, don't they?
they do, and that's what I was about to bring up to you.
Okay.
It's a very underappreciated rye.
Is it really?
Extremely underappreciated.
and is it just the one bottle, the 6-year? Or isn't that the Russell's 6?
That's the white and green label.
Right.
When you look at the green label, that is your 110 proof rye.
Okay.
Is it age stated? Or is it just like a 6 to 8 year blended?
You've got that 6 to 8 year, but it's a single barrel.
Or it's a single barrel, okay.
Yep. And so if you're looking for another rye that is very underappreciated, very spicy, very consistent, the Russell's Reserve.
I've never had that one either. Probably one after having the rare breed I probably needed to try.
Yep.
You need to. You need to expand. But here's something interesting. They do, or I wish they would bring it back. They did it for a very short time where you could do a store selection or a club pick for the Russell's Reserve Rye.
Oh, you could?
Yes, and to
No more.
date that I know of, there were only 6 done.
Oh, wow.
And they're iconic.
6 around
Total,
the country.
Around the country, 6 total picks. There might be more, but I've only been able to verify 6.
So have you ever heard of a group from outside the states coming in to do their own barrel and shipping it somewhere to have it as a pick, so to speak?
No, I don't know.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, honestly,
Because
I
it's
don't know.
popular in other
Right.
places.
Is it just a U.S. phenomenon?
Yeah.
Or
Now that you've had a chance to sit on it, what do you think about that 1855?
it's phenomenal.
I can't get enough of it.
No.
To me, though, it's almost confusing because the nose makes you think that it's going to be sweet, but it's
you get
not.
a lot of the fruit on there.
Right.
You
Like
do.
I said, there's a lot of creme brulee, burnt sugar, caramel.
But the palate is just so different on it compared to other bourbons that you've tried, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's
Pretty solid, huh?
Yeah.
Kind of hard that we're going to take a step down with the next thing we pour.
yeah.
Well, I don't know about that because we brought some fun stuff today. But as far as the rye goes, do yourself a favor and pick up a Russell's.
I'll do that. I need to try that one. I'm a big fan of rye in general. So being able to...
And so going back, that's the solid green label.
That's the solid green label.
Okay, not the green and white.
No, because
White
that's a
with
blend.
Okay.
And
gotcha.
so the dark green is a single
barrel. Gotcha.
and proofed at like 110?
110.
110.
So just like Pikesville.
And what's interesting, there's some trivia here for you. There's only been 3 different barrel entry proofs since they started distilling in 1970 at Wild Turkey. So anything pre-2004, entry proof was 107.
So for people listening that know about bourbon, they know exactly what you're talking about. Those that are picking up on it and trying to learn about bourbon, entry proof means when they put the liquid, after it's distilled, into the barrel to be aged, they get it to a certain proof. And in the rules, bourbon can't go in any higher than 125.
That's correct.
Can be less, but not higher. And you're saying they put it in, what was it? What did they do it initially?
107.
107.
Then between 04 and 06, it was 110 entry proof.
Okay.
Then since 2006, it's been 115.
Okay. And that's all up to the distiller, the master distiller, because he's trying to, in his mind, the entry proof is kind of going to give him some idea of what he's going to get when he comes out of the barrel.
With the aging process.
With the aging.
Right. And so what was also interesting, and we touched on it earlier, when they changed their Cypress fermentation tanks in favor of stainless steel in the mid-90s, there was some changes. And so it wasn't as funky anymore,
Okay.
to me.
Yeah.
People will argue with me with that because they say the funkiness comes from the wood, which is correct. But that's also something that they've done consistently is they use the same barrel producer, and it's always a number 4 alligator char.
Oh, really?
Yep, and so
Always.
all their products go into the same barrel.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. I thought different products had a different char on them, but they don't. They're consistent with that.
All alligator char number 4.
Okay, so there was in 2000, there was a huge warehouse fire with Wild Turkey, wasn't there?
There was, and they got into a lot of trouble with the Environmental Protection Service or whatever
Agency, EPA,
because the fluid ran into a river.
Oh, really?
And there was a major fish kill because it was a water treatment plant it fed a water treatment plant, and so that had to be shut down. So there was a lot of fines and whatnot, but it was a pretty significant fire.
One warehouse, about 17,000 barrels.
Yep.
That seems like a lot.
Not as big as Heaven Hills fire.
Oh, really?
Yep. Okay. And so that was a huge one.
So that's one warehouse. When we talk about, we always talk about in the bourbon world, it matters to people who are really into bourbon about what warehouse it came from, what tier it was on in the rick house and all that kind of stuff. Where is it located? How many warehouses does a big outfit like Wild Turkey have? Do you know?
Well, they have them spread out through Kentucky.
Okay.
And so
not all in one spot.
Not all in one spot.
That's strategic?
Well, it was not by design, but by
where they could get land and put
land
stuff?
acquisition.
Yep, but also they bought 3 rick houses from Four Roses back in the day.
Oh, they did?
That are still functional.
Probably in the late 70s, early 80s, maybe?
Yep.
Okay.
And they, but you're looking at the main house is Tyrone. And so when you'll hear Tyrone A, that's going to be the rick house in Tyrone.
Okay.
And that is where you start looking at the different rick houses. There's Tyrone A and there's Camp Nelson A.
Okay.
And if people hear me talk about Camp Nelson, last year was a huge year for Russell's Reserve Camp Nelson picks. That was by design. They roll out barrels when they feel like a rick house has come to quality.
Okay.
And so they'll give club picks and store picks access to that particular rick house. Camp Nelson A and Camp Nelson F were big last year. And so the way that you delineate that is on Russell's Reserve, if you know it's a store pick, they used to have a hang tag on them.
I remember that's what I kept looking for.
This year they went to the sticker.
Okay.
And they did that because the hang tags, unfortunately, people were recreating.
Okay.
Forging, if you will.
So I'm looking at the back of this one, and it says distilled with the date 12/5/11, dumped on 4/30/20, bottled on 5/25/20. So when they dump it, it goes where?
To be bottled.
Okay. Because it says distilled, it's coming out of the still, goes into another container.
Yep, and that's where you've got the...
So that's the 9 years aged.
Yep.
Just under 8 years and some months, yeah. And then it says it's in warehouse A, floor 4.
4th floor. If you listen to Russell's Reserve fans, the 4th floor seems to be the iconic floor.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting because this is a pick from South Carolina that me and some other guys here in town think is just fantastic. I mean, just really good.
Well, I brought a treat for you today.
Okay.
So, when you look at the rick houses, I brought you one from Rick House C. Rick House C, I do not recall seeing a Rick House C out there. And this year, they're being released. So it is going to be a different profile than turkey fans have been used to. So if you want to crack that, let's have that next.
We may want to do a little side-by-side with this warehouse A.
Let's do it.
And see what we think about those. This is also a pick from what I've come to kind of figure out. Benny's is kind of iconic for making some really good quality picks. I think they're from up in the Chicago area.
They are. Now, the beautiful thing about stores like Benny's, people that have been doing this for a long time, cork and barrel. I mean, you're looking at people that have gained the respect of the industry. They get access to barrels that Club A, Club B, or Club C would not have access to be frank.
Okay.
So they get better stuff rolled out to them. Now, with this particular one, I'm excited because this is going to be a profile you've never had.
So when's the last time you can remember a warehouse C coming out?
I don't.
You don't?
I don't. And
did you get some, Dave? And then here's this other one. If you guys want to try them side by side, I don't know if you'd want to or not, but I'm going to see the difference.
I love that sound.
I love that sound too. It means goodness is about to go into your glass.
So this one is the A. Okay.
Now let's see. So this is Warehouse A. So this is actually out of Tyrone A, and this isn't a Camp Nelson A.
Okay. This is a Tyrone C.
That is a Tyrone C.
So same family of warehouse, Tyrone A, Tyrone C.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see that on the nose they're similar, but to me, the C seems like it has a lot more punch to it. I'm getting a lot more on the nose. I'm getting just a little bit more same type of profile, but it's just more pronounced.
It is. The nose on it is fantastic.
The nose is like blowing me away.
The Tyrone A, though, not so much. It's a pretty light nose.
Yeah, well, I didn't think so until I put it up against this.
There are definitely distinct differences.
But you can tell it's that same profile.
Yeah, and if that is the take-home message of this podcast, then let it be that. Don't rest on Russell's Reserve if you're a bourbon drinker, because you're going to get a fantastic bourbon with so much variance that you never know what you're going to pull off the shelf, to be honest. I have tasting notes from the different warehouses, and so we'll see if you agree with this. When I think Tyrone A, light and sweet spice and more of a baked goods. And if you put the nose in that category, you definitely...
I would put the nose in that category for sure.
Yep.
I haven't tasted the C yet, but this Tyrone A is really good on the palate, though.
It is.
It's got the mid palate. It's just an explosion of flavor there.
It's got a very lingering in palate as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, a lot of that can go to the fact that it is, it's not chill filtered.
Okay.
So
you get the oils and everything on there too.
Now the C.
I do like Russell's product though, man. It's just so good.
Wow. The end palate doesn't linger like the A. The leading palate is just the explosion. That is where you're getting the flavor.
Is it?
Yeah, because I haven't taken a sip of the C yet because
I haven't either.
Because the A is still
lingering
on my
Yeah, I was
tongue,
about to ask you to grab me a bottle of water so I could kind of cleanse my palate a little bit. Or Ernie, can you reach one back there?
I sure can.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that A sticks around for a
It
long
does, which
time.
is a good thing. I mean, it's a nice bottle. That's why I say
Absolutely.
They picked it out of South Carolina, Ben Smith and those guys, and they did a good job. Or I don't know if it was Ben on the pick, but he had access to it anyway.
This C, though, is more classic.
So when you say classic, are you saying you're
there's
almost getting classic
funk.
turkey?
Yeah, you're getting You're getting that good, funky, musty oak.
So when we talk about old bottles that people are looking for, this is something you would put. Because I've never had that, so I don't have that kind of bar to compare it to.
I mean, it's definitely not a mid-90s.
Okay, not that.
Not that, but extremely good.
Those two are so vastly different.
Right.
I'm pretty blown away that they are that different. The C is a lot more
A lot more oil on that C.
and more wood flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That
you said,
musty
like
oak.
that musty oak wet.
You're exactly right. You don't get that cherries and the,
No,
and the
that
fruit that
from
you get
the
on the first
from the
one.
A. I had a
A.
lot of the
You're getting leather. You're getting
Yeah.
the deeper
So
flavors.
going between those two, I would say the C is savory. Like if you're talking about food, the C is savory, and the A is more dessert.
I would agree with that.
That
It's like two different profiles, even though they're both
Yeah.
Russell's Reserve single barrels.
Yeah,
It's
so
like,
how good would that C be with a nice juicy steak?
we're going to find out someday.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn to. We were talking about this with Daryl Bowman. I'm trying to learn to,
what to pair with.
just in general, how do you drink whiskey with food? I've never done it. I'm a wine guy, so I've always, if I'm cooking, I'm going to have bourbon while I'm cooking for a couple hours, a couple pours. But then once I go to dinner, I'm always wine, and so I'm trying to figure out how do I do bourbon with food. And my plan was with this kind of rich dinner that we're going to have tonight. I thought I'd try to stick with some bourbon tonight.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to update my tasting notes because this C is definitely different than what's out there.
Yeah.
It's definitely different. So, my favorite Rickhouses by far is F. I love Tyrone F versus Camp Nelson F. Tyrone F is more classic. It has a kind of a weak mid palate, which I like because it finishes very strong. It reminds me a lot of that A.
Man, that C is fantastic.
And I'm getting a distinct note out of it that I'm trying to place, and I think what Ernie said earlier is that it's leather.
Leather and anise. But
Here come the mascots.
what I really, really like, though, is K, Rickhouse K, because I love cherry bombs.
Okay.
I love cherry profiled.
Really?
bourbon, and that's why I love Heaven Hill, because you get a lot of cherry bombs out of Heaven Hill. But K is herbal, red fruits, and it's got that leather tannic flavor to it as well.
Okay.
So if you find a K, buy two.
See, these are things I didn't know, Dave. I don't know if you did. I would look at it and just grab it. I wouldn't
Same.
even know to look at the warehouse or
Same.
or
I
tier.
did notice that they had different warehouse letters on them, but until recently, looking for one that says CN-F for the Camp Nelson Rickhouse F, but I haven't come across any of those yet.
Now,
But
Rickhouse E is interesting because that's where all the single barrel rye comes out of. And
Now, when you talk Camp Nelson, is that Russell's or is that Rare Breed?
no, that's Russell's.
Okay, that's Russell's. Okay. But go ahead, Ernie. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, that was it. The rye, the single barrel rye, is kept in one rickhouse, and that's E.
Okay.
And so you can kind of see where they lean. They love their bourbon, and the rye is kind of we have it.
Yeah, we got to offer it because people like rye.
Yep, but
But that Rare Breed, they did a good job. It's fantastic.
that was one of their strongest releases in a while.
and
Yeah.
what's the proof on the Russells?
110. Always.
Always
110.
okay
Or at least as long as I can.
for the bourbon and the rye,
Yep,
single barrels.
single barrels.
Just funny how different these are.
Yeah,
And I know anytime you have a single barrel, they can always be
of
different.
course, but these are strikingly different.
Just because they're from that same, they're two different warehouses, so I shouldn't be that surprised.
I've tried my best to have at least one bottle from every house.
Okay.
So my unicorn, if anybody's out there and they're listening to me and want to send me a Christmas present, if you ever see a W, that's the one I have not had.
From Warehouse W.
Warehouse W.
So are you telling me it's a small warehouse, not a lot in there? Is it an older warehouse?
I have no idea. I've never seen it.
Oh, really? But it exists.
It
you know
exists.
that for sure.
I know that for sure.
I'm just wondering why we wouldn't see bottles from it if it has barrels in there.
Yep, and that's going to be interesting. So this year, what I've heard, and I'm very excited for, is there's been bourbon, Russell's Reserve bourbon, stored in Warehouse E, the rye house.
Okay.
And
that tells you what?
I don't know. It's just interesting to me.
Okay.
It's interesting to me to
They've got some thought behind it if they're doing it.
yeah, because they do nothing at that distillery without a lot of thought behind it and without method to their madness. So I'm going to be very interested to taste that one if and when it comes out.
So what are your, at your bar, you're always going to have a bottle of what from Wild Turkey? I know it's multiple. I know you're going to have 101 on a rare breed. Is there anything else that you go, is it a single barrel from Russell's?
I'm always going to have Russell's on.
What else? Anything else?
Well,
Or are those the three that you go, those are kind of, $20, $45, $50 that are just
Staples.
yeah.
staples, that those are your staples. Now, if you're talking about my personal shelf, I'm always going to have 1855s on my shelf multiple years.
Well, I know you do, yeah.
It's just my thing, and I will chase those until I'm old and gray.
And so what does that bottle go for?
You can get lucky and find I have actually found some in the dirty South, Louisiana, where a couple of bankers have had estate sales and picked one up for $50.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I want to buy that bottle from you.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
That might have been the one I brought you.
Okay.
The 92.
And so you said that these were stopped being produced in the mid 90s?
I think the last year, I hate to quote, but I think the last year for the 1855 was 1999.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
So more than 20 years ago.
So
Yeah.
Kentucky Spirit's not one that you say you have to have.
No, unless it's a pewter top.
Unless it's a pewter top, maybe a pick. Would you consider a pick? Or it depends on who picked it.
I always say if you're going to a party or something along that lines and you're in the middle of nowhere, you're more than likely going to find a Kentucky Spirit.
Okay.
It's a good one to pick up.
Okay. But if
Just-
there's a rare breed next to it, you're going to take the rare
I'm
breed.
going to take the rare breed.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of the Kentucky Spirit. To me, it doesn't differ very much from regular Turkey 101.
I would agree wholly because
That's
I have
my thought.
I've done them side by side,
And it's very hard to distinguish
and
the
it
two.
is
I
very.
can buy almost 3 bottles of this versus the one of the. That's why I've never pulled the trigger.
Yes.
I'm the one. Am I missing out on something?
And the only reason I bought it was because the classic bottle, and it was a pick. But
Yep, and the picks are decent, but all it is a 101 pick that
Right.
might have a little more age to it.
yep,
Okay.
But
Okay. So we know 101 rare breed and the Russell's Reserve single barrel. Those are the 3 staples that if you're going to make a recommendation that you have in your bar all the time, those are them.
Yep.
Those are quality ones.
Quality
and I
ones.
agree. I mean, I think they're fantastic. But you also brought me 2 really cool bottles that I wanted to talk about today that I know nothing about. A Wild Turkey Tradition, which is also 101 proof. And before we started recording, you were telling me this is a Wild Turkey 101 on steroids.
It is, well, it's so underrated though.
Okay.
It is probably one of the most overlooked bottles out there that you can still get for less than $300.
Okay.
And that is for a classic turkey. The other one that I brought you is a 12-year export that is going to blow your mind. I mean, just looking at the color differential on what's on the table,
So dark.
it's dark.
Yeah.
And I want you to try that just so you can experience the ultimate turkey funk.
This is it.
This is it.
Okay.
It's not the one, but it's one that you're consistently going to get that good turkey funk to.
So the Tradition,
Yeah.
is it still made everywhere?
No.
Okay, so
No.
when did they stop making that?
I believe that
Approximately.
one probably early 2000s.
Oh, okay, that long ago.
Yeah. Not quite sure.
Okay.
It was one of those small release lines until it got pared down to what you see today.
But good stuff.
Good stuff.
And now, how about the Wild Turkey 12-year? Is it still being produced?
No,
Because you said this was overseas only.
that was overseas only.
Was it just Japan, or was it different locations, or anywhere in Europe, or
This one, I think, actually came out of Italy.
oh, out of Italy? Okay, that's pretty cool. It's actually very cool.
Yep, so I think you're going to enjoy that one. Now, one thing that you do have to be very careful with is with Wild Turkey products, when you start looking at below 2000s, the classic bottles, the cheesy gold foils, the 12-year, the faux split label, the split label, the donut. Oh my God, that is probably that's in my top 5.
Oh, really?
Yep, the bottle looks like a donut.
I've never seen it, Dave. You?
No.
Never heard of it.
Same.
First, I'm hearing of a donut in Wild Turkey.
Yep, and it is
Round.
It's a beautiful bottle. It's a
Not
beautiful.
a long neck on it.
It's just it's a
interesting.
stubby little bottle. It's
That would be a
fantastic.
cool one to come across.
Yeah.
Call me if you do. I haven't been able to find one, but back to my original point, when you open these, the odds are real good you're going to lose the cork into the bottle because they disintegrate so quickly.
Just like on that 1992.
Yep, that
Cork's still floating.
Yep, it's got one in there. But if you lay it on its side and let the cork kind of soak for a couple minutes, and if you're going to open that, I would go ahead and do that. Tilt it on its side, let the cork get nice and wet, and never twist when you open the bottle, pull straight up. And sometimes you'll get lucky enough where if you get it out, it comes out completely, or it comes out just enough where you can pinch the cork out.
So here's my question, though. Once you get it out, do not put that, even if it comes out whole,
Don't put that
cork back in. Get a different cork that you have.
Get a different one.
Okay.
And
Maybe
so,
if you've got a cool William LaRue Weller cork, you can use it.
Yeah, that's in the 1792, so that means you got to finish that one, then transfer the cork.
yep.
And so on the Wild Turkey 12, so when did they stop making? When?
Oh, they have old barrels, don't get me wrong, at the distillery. They just don't put out these special releases, so now they use it for their Master's Keep, like 17-year and stuff like that.
Okay, so that being an overseas item.
It's not going there anymore.
Okay, it's not a regular product for overseas.
Not anymore.
Okay.
All right, we are back, and Ernie has worked his magic, man. You got that cork out perfectly.
And left your tax stamp on.
Nice.
Or your export.
Cork's not going back in, but I'm going to save it.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Let's see. Smells good, too.
Yeah.
That's what she said. I don't know if you guys heard that or not. All right, well.
It's your fresh bottle, man.
Okay,
Have at
I'll
it.
pour it. So this is from 1999.
1999.
Wild Turkey, aged 12 years, from Italy. Only in Europe or Asia or other places, not America.
Correct.
That's a good sound as well. Ooh, boy, that looks good. Yeah. The color on that is extremely dark.
I think it's just always fun to get bottles like this, open them up, and share them.
Isn't it a pretty bottle, though?
It is. It's just
Oh,
classic.
my God, the nose. Make sure I put a cork in there in case I knock that over.
Yeah.
All right, Ernie. So this is from 1999. Tell us a little, I know you gave us a little history on this, but this is
It is 12-year-old 101.
12-year-old 101.
Yep, that's all it is. And
The color on it, sitting next to that bottle, I know nobody can see it, but
so
next to the
vastly
other,
different.
yeah,
So much darker. And it's amazing what 4 years can do. But the nose,
is incredible. Dave?
Yes.
Dave's just happy over there right now.
I'm just grinning from ear to ear.
What do you think, Dave?
I don't have any words.
Hard to describe. I mean, it's just full-bodied.
But
You get that the fruit on it, the cherries on it, but you get that wood and that oak. But the balance of it's just very, very pleasant on the palate. I mean, it's just so nice.
and I'm just nosing it, just thinking how similar it is to most everything that we've tried in the line. I mean, absolutely there are differences, but the similarities are definitely there.
There's base consistency.
Yes.
But this doesn't have that ethanol, where you
that-
kind of have to wait a second. I mean, you can just
Correct.
get in
You
and
can
get,
put your nose deep in this
Yeah.
one, but that is the biggest difference, is that you don't get really any ethanol up front when you're nosing it.
This is probably the first bourbon I've had where, you kind of have to, I don't have to ease my way into
Right.
it with the nose. I mean, I can just get in there and start picking out things that I think
Yeah, you don't have to have your mouth open going in here so you don't burn your nostrils.
Yeah.
This will be a fun one to let the glass dry out and see what the base notes are.
Boy, I can tell you already, Ernie. Thank you very much. It's just, to me, just well balanced. It's just nice on the palate. It's just really nice. It's not that high ethanol on the palate, even though it's 101.
That would be my...
It finishes with a nice, easy finish. It's not something that's just going to beat you up.
Yeah, if I had to classify this with one single word, it would be balanced. Because it's equal across mid, front, rear.
See, and I was going to say
palate.
refined. This is like refined or classy. This is just very... Somebody did a good job making this.
Absolutely, but you don't have one thing overpowering. The ethanol, the burn isn't overpowering. The front palate, it's not a front palate explosion. It's pretty consistent across.
And complete.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. This is fantastic. I have several people who I consider good friends, but I'm not sure if I'll share this.
You better keep that one hidden.
Well, this has been fun, guys, going through a little turkey. And
We were lucky enough to taste through some excellent expressions of what wild turkey puts out.
anything else, Ernie?
I'm good. I'm ready for some dinner.
Yeah, well, we're going to get ready to start cooking and continue drinking.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this has been a lot of fun, Ernie. Thanks for coming down and doing this with us, man. It's been cool to get a little bit more knowledge on wild turkey. I've gotten into it a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot more than what I think I know.
Yep. And I've figured out that I need to redirect some of my bourbon budget
To wild turkey.
back to wild turkey products.
Yeah. Good place to live, I think.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.